5, 6, 7, 8.
Hey everyone, welcome to the EX Podcast episode number 8. My name is Stefan Vincent. I've started this podcast because I believe that companies have to think of themselves as employment brands if they hope to attract and retain talent. Let me ask you a simple question. Are you excited to get up every day and go to work? And what about your employees? Well, consider this. Only 30% of the workforce feel engaged at work. That means for the other 70%, work kind of sucks. And yes, we all get it. Engaged employees are good for business. But why companies are not acting on it? After all, employees are the first ambassadors of a brand. Engaged employees foster innovation, deliver higher customer service, and bring creativity to an organization. In other words, they are more productive. This podcast brings a different lens to the employee experience, a brand and customer experience angle, rather than a traditional HR angle. In our episodes, we cover multiple topics that touch and impact the employee experience, like the key components of a positive EX, or office space design and its impact on the company's culture, the employee journey map, or how design thinking, collaboration, and innovation are intertwined. We also talk about employer branding and employee engagement tools and measurements, or the place of technology in the employee experience. Today's guest is Richard Whitney, Global Employment Brand Manager at Cummins. Cummins is a 55,000 plus employee company, a world leader in diesel and natural gas engines, headquartered in Columbus, Indiana. Today with Rich, we'll talk about the place and the role of employment brand management in the organization and how it supports recruiting efforts and retaining talents. How a strong employment brand becomes a differentiator in a very competitive talent market. How a culture of diversity and inclusiveness provides a platform for collaboration, well-being, personal and professional development. And how Cummins has strengthened its ties to the local community as a way to build an ecosystem that benefits everyone. This episode is brought to you by Mold, M-O-L-D. Mold is a full-service brand agency that works with artists, writers, and creatives to help its clients increase sales, book more gigs, and boost audience engagements. Its creative team of graphic designers, videographers, writers, and brand managers work together to make sure that every time a client's name is seen or heard, it shines. Find out more at themoldagency.com. I really hope you enjoy this conversation. If you get a chance, please make sure to review the podcast on iTunes. You can open the iTunes app and type in Stefan Vincent or EX Podcast, and you will find us there. And last thing, if you want to send me feedback, suggestions for future topics or guests, you can reach me at svincent@exsummit.com or on Twitter at ex_summit. All right, let's get to it. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the EX Podcast. I'm very excited for today's guest, Richard Whitney, Global Employment Brand Manager at Cummins. And Cummins is a world leader in diesel and natural gas engines, headquartered in Columbus, Indiana. Rich, thanks so much for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So you've got a pretty cool title, Global Employment Brand Manager. Mm-hmm. So first of all, tell us about what Cummins does, and then what is Employment Brand Manager at Cummins?
Sure. So we, for about 100 years now, we have been designing, developing, refining, testing, building, breaking, and improving and servicing diesel engines. We've gone to alternate fuels like natural gas, methane, biodigester type gases, and even moving into more of the electrification now, and we've been through the hybrids, right? So we hire a lot of engineers, we hire a lot of technical people, and we hire a lot of people that need to work globally and really cross-functionally. So my job is to put the company out there, because we're actually a B2B. We're not a consumer-facing company, with the exception of some engines and some consumer products. But people don't know who we are, right? So my job is to tell our story, to make the fact that how we work and what we do attractive, and help people really understand what they could do here at Cummins and how they can build their career here.
So in your world, is talent acquisition different from employment branding?
So we're at the front end of it, right? If you think about the marketing funnel, we're at that attraction end of it, right? And we actually help candidates, potential candidates, understand more about the company, understand if it's something that they want to pursue, and then once they decide they're interested, to teach them a little bit more about our culture, help them understand about the role and how they can be successful in the role, and then provide those paths for them to apply, maybe to learn more information about the company and the role as well while they're applying.
That's very interesting. Does Cummins have an employer brand mission statement that is different from the business brand mission statement?
No. Actually, we're trying to improve people's lives. We're trying to get the top talent to join us so that we can do a better job of our mission and our vision overall as a company.
And does Cummins have a different employee value proposition versus its business value proposition?
Oh, yeah, very much, very much. Our value proposition really is built around being a collaborative environment, very inclusive, ethics-based environment where people who enjoy that kind of environment can actually build their careers. And not just by doing their job, but by being involved in the community, kind of going across the enterprise, building networks, and really continuing to learn. One of our value propositions is this lattice work of opportunity, where it's no longer a vertical promotion ladder, if you will, to be able to get to your ultimate position or where you think you want to be. What we have is a lot of lateral and 45-degree moves that people make into different business units or into different functions or even different groups within their function. And what that does is gives people a really good, broad understanding of the company and sets them up for leadership opportunities, right? So we want a CEO that's not going to come from another company. We want a CEO that comes from our company. We want that CEO to have a really broad-based knowledge of the company and all the things that we do here, not just inside one function, coming all the way through one function to be our CEO.
Yeah. Cummins is obviously a global company with different sites, not only just in the US, but across the globe. But the headquarters are in Columbus, Indiana,
right?
Which is about 45 to 60 minutes southeast.
A little southeast, but mostly south.
Of Indianapolis. So is it a challenge to recruit top talent, top engineers to Columbus, Indiana?
Yes, it is. And what we say is once we have the people come to Columbus and we're able to have them meet with our people, it becomes a lot less challenging, right? And one of the things about Columbus is it's a 48,000 people city. It's a small city, right? And but the amount of diversity in that city is really hard to compare to. There's other cities where global companies have headquarters that are very much like Columbus, but the amount of just different people you can meet, the restaurants that are coming in there, and just a lot of the infrastructure there it makes it a really good place to live. It's in close proximity to Bloomington, which is a college town at where IU is. It's 45 minutes from there, an hour and a half from Bloomington, 45 minutes from Indy. People live there in Columbus. People live out in the country. People live in Franklin or another small town. People live in suburbia Indianapolis, or they live downtown Indianapolis and work at our downtown Indianapolis location, which is a brand new building we just built this year.
So I imagine that it's the engineering job marketplace is very competitive,
Yes.
right? With companies as big as Cummins on the East Coast, the West Coast, or maybe in Chicago or other more exciting cities. Mm-hmm. How do you compete with those, and what's the attractiveness of Cummins?
So some of it's the career development opportunities that we actually have inside the company. Some of it is the diverse people that are in our company. Some of it is the opportunity to move around the world, basically through our global mobility policy. And some of it is just the exciting work that we're doing. And you think, okay, it's a diesel engine inside of a pickup truck or inside of a giant mine haul truck or on a pleasure craft or something, right? How exciting can that be? And for a lot of engineers, that iterative improvement process, the constant looking to the future to see what we're going to do is pretty exciting, right? And so while we know that not everybody's going to be fit for our company, or I should say our company's not going to be a good fit for them, we know there's a lot of people who say, yeah, I think I want to join that company and see what they have to offer. So I think once people to come to Columbus, they're able to meet our people, go through the interview process. A lot of people say, wow, I didn't realize, right? And they come away kind of surprised. And we get a lot of people who say, wow, I never thought that I would move to a small city in Indiana, but here I am. And we have people who have been here for 45, 30 years, 25 years. Got a lot of people with a lot of longevity in the company, too.
Okay, so we'll get a bit later in the discussion how Cummins helped shape the community in Columbus, because I think it's a pretty compelling story as well. But before we get to that point, let me ask you a question. Last December, you spoke at on an EX panel about the candidate experience. In your opinion, what is a good candidate experience? From the resume submission process to the interview process, the timeline of response, or the duration of how many weeks it takes to go through the entire process, etc. What is for you a good candidate experience? So,
quite frankly, for us internally, a good candidate experience is one where somebody gets hired. Right. And but as we've been doing a lot of research and talking to people and really seeing the trends out there, we understand that is not what makes up a good candidate experience. We've spent time kind of nibbling off the corners, if you will, to kind of soften and improve our candidate experience. And let me stop, because I'm probably going to say customer experience a couple of times here, but we define our candidates and our hiring managers as our customers in the recruiting group, right? And so when I'm talking about our customers, I'm also talking about our hiring managers and what that experience is like for them.
I see.
Which in turn helps them provide a better experience for our candidates.
Right.
So for candidates' experience, it is a lot about transparency. It's about a varying set of expectations, right? Some people may have an expectation that they would be talking to a person at each step. Other people just want to get a communication, but at those certain times, those moments that matter, they want to talk to a person, and they don't want to have just an email. They actually want to have a phone call with them, right? And so what we're finding is at different levels of roles that we're hiring for, not always does that drive the variation, but sometimes it's actually the function or the career that a person is in that drives some of that variation.
Have you done any specific research, or we talked about a customer journey map when you identify all the different touch points of a customer with the brand throughout the entire process. Does Cummins do something similar to that when they identify all the different touch points of a candidate through the hiring process?
So we haven't done any global external research. We've done some limited research in the United States, and we've done some internal research from people recently hired, and we do a survey through all of our onboarding sessions. So anytime someone joins the company, we ask them about their experience through the candidate, through the hiring process. And so based on some of that data is what I'll be talking about. But we have done some assumptive journey maps, right, where we actually get out the Post-it notes in the big room and get everybody involved from the tech person to the campus recruiting liaison to somebody who's just connecting with our volunteers who go back out to campus. So we're really trying to get everybody at every point in that kind of ecosystem and get together and find out what does that journey map actually look like, and where are the moments where we think, right, where there's gaps or where we could do better. And so that's where we are in the journey right now. We've taken those different process gaps that we've found and said, I think these are quick wins or quick hits that we can do, and we're in the process of going through some of those quick wins right now.
Okay. Can you share with us some of the big findings that you've done, or is it a bit?
Oh, it's top secret, man. It's totally top secret. No, one of those. They're pretty simple, actually, right? I mean, things that we tried to do 5-6 years ago when we kind of rebuilt our process and kind of created this global recruiting team. What we looked at was how to streamline the process and how to set up using a very large applicant tracking system tool, and how to make that as personable as possible. And over this 5-6 years, things have changed quite a bit, right? So one of the first things that we're doing, and that we've done previously, but we haven't done it with a view of what's the candidate's experience on this, right? We've done it with a branding hat on, and we've done it with our proofreading hat on and our compliance hat on, but not really with how does this feel to the candidate? Yeah. And that's really just all those automated communications and all the communications that are kind of set up as a form for recruiters to use out of this applicant tracking system, right? And so trying to understand, do these communications answer questions? Do they create more questions? Do they drive doubt? What is the outcome of that, right? And so as we go through that audit, and then after we go through that audit, then we'll go through that with actual candidates and take that design thinking or that human-centered design theory to bear and really use those principles and practices and find out where are those actual experience, or where are the moments that matter inside of that experience.
There are some advanced technology now, such as AI or chatbots, that allow some sort of personalization of the customer experience, candidate experience. So we're talking about email communications being sent to candidates and whether they would prefer to actually speak to someone live versus getting a communication via email. Do you guys have tested this, like the AI chatbots or anything like this, to enhance the personalization of the experience?
No, I think I can see that happening in another 2 to 3 years, maybe. But I mean, for right now, we're really at that basic building blocks, right? We're just at the point where we're saying, what is it that's important about the candidate experience, and what is it about our hiring manager's experience that we're really creating problems. And so taking some of those simple quick wins that I talked about, and fixing those, I think those will help. That's not, but what we also have to do is set our minds as a global recruiting team that we're not going to fix something and then wipe our hands and be done, right? So it's helping our recruiting team understand that this is an iterative process, understanding there's a different mindset that we have to take, and understanding that this is going to be something that just constantly evolves. Right. And so I think that's where we are in that process, or in that big continuum. And if I had to put ourselves on the spectrum of 1 to 100, I think we would be somewhere around 10 or 15, it feels like. So no AI inclusion yet.
Not yet. So we mentioned that Cummins is a global company, and you are global employment brand manager, right? How do you scale the employee experience globally, and how does it work within Cummins?
So what we have done is we've basically built out these steps inside of our ATS. That's a process step, just a process piece that you go through, right? Piece of work. But what we also have done is relied on the recruiting leaders in each one of our key regions that help us understand where those differences are in that region or in that country, right? Based on culture, based on history. And so that's the way that we went about scaling up. Was we said, here's some basic compliance pieces, here's some basic process pieces, and then how do we regionalize those to fit the needs of the candidates in those regions? One of the things that I think Cummins learned decades ago, I would say, is that you can't take something that you build in North America and then just push it out to the rest of the world. It just doesn't work, right? And I think back when J.I. Miller went to China in 1978, this was one of the things that he said, yeah, change is going to be just forever, and the change is happening right now, and so we have to not change. We don't have to change other people, but we have to change ourselves and change how we interact with these other people. So I think that was something that was learned not just from J.I. Miller, but when J.I. Miller went to China, this is something that the company learned overall back in the 70s. So no, we don't. We really do try to have capable people in each region, and then understand what is unique to that region.
So when do you tend to attract and hire, let's say, Asian engineers, mostly in Asia, or do you have some transfers or people coming from one region to another?
So we have people moving all around the world. I don't know that there is a specific one region where we're trying to find engineers and then move them around. We are very strong in China. We're very strong in India. We're getting stronger in South Africa. Very strong in Australia, and then in Europe, also in the UK. So, in Brazil, also in Mexico. So I think that covers just about every continent. Yeah, every continent, yeah. And Singapore now too. We have a lot of people, but we do have a lot of engineering that happens in China and in India, and we have people that come to the U.S. for an expat assignment for 3 years, and then we also have people that actually apply for a job in the U.S., get that job, and then get the visa work straightened out after that fact, and then they move here. So there's not so much any one country that we're looking to bring people from to the U.S. because we're sending people from the U.S. to other countries as well. So I can't say it's a one-to-one, but I think there is a broad base across the world where we bring people from.
How many employees work for Cummins globally?
55,000 and maybe 300, 400 now. Okay.
And what's the split between those different regions, roughly? Do you have an idea?
I wish I had a map, but it's U.S. is about 50% of, I think it was 49 or 48% the last thing we looked. And then UK, China, India, and I would have to say probably Central and Mexico and Central America. Okay. Or our Latin America ABO, actually.
What's the type of adaptation of people coming from a different region to the Midwest? Right, because you have the Midwest, which is a culture in itself, right? Yeah. It's very different from Europe or very different from Asia. Right. But you don't come to Chicago, you come to Columbus, Indiana. So do you guys have some sort of classes or training around culture to help some of your engineers coming from different regions to the Midwest?
So there's different trainings. There's obviously we have all the compliance type training, right? The code of business conduct, and to help people understand that travels around the world, right? It doesn't change or doesn't turn off if you go somewhere else. But there's usually there is a champion in the go-to country, and then there's affinity groups that we have all around the world. So the champion helps with different aspects, and HR steps in and does all the work, right? But there's always a champion or a partner or a buddy that is there that's going to help this new person get acclimated. Yes. And so they're not helping them find a house, but they're helping them find a restaurant to eat at, right? Uh-huh. And they're helping them find maybe the child care that is best for them. Where the company is doing, here's a list of 5 or 10 items to choose from. The buddy's saying, you might want to choose number 3 and number 6, right? And so because they have the experience with it. And also if it's someone from that culture, then they can help them understand where's, for let's say Chinese, where's the best place where Chinese people would want to have their child care, right? And is it a place where it's maybe bilingual? So there's a lot of different aspects of that. But I think overall the affinity groups actually have the biggest impact. So we have women's affinity group, Hispanic and different regions around the world, LGBTQ. We have millennial affinity group, right? So we have all these different affinity groups that people can join, and actually we don't force them to join, but we suggest, hey, this would be a really good thing. We get them introduced to the leader of the affinity group, and that affinity group then helps provide that local, the local people who are there that share in their same culture or same affinity of some aspect. So that we've seen has had probably the best results, where it's kind of left up to the person how deeply they want to get involved in the affinity group, and then what they need from that affinity group, and then ultimately they'll wind up being in the affinity group giving back to new people that come as well.
Okay. There's been an emphasis over the past few years on personal branding and being maybe an important component in the recruiting process. If you have a strong brand, you have more chances to get hired or to get recruited if it's just passive recruiting, whatever it might be. Do you pay close attention to that?
To a person's
personal branding?
It impacts no matter what, right? Because people are going to look on social media. Uh-huh. We don't have anything that's officially where we go and we try to do a search or anything else. But if you're going to interview somebody, and chances are you're going to go check out their LinkedIn, uh-huh. right? Yeah. and so building that personal brand and really using those social tools in the right way makes a big difference, right? I mean, I think we've all heard the horror stories of the person that interviewed great and everything was awesome, and then somebody checked out their Facebook page and said, "Holy moly, what's this person do?" Yeah. And we don't do that here at Cummins, but as a practice. But I mean, there's different aspects of your personal brand outside of social media or the digital realm, mm-hmm. right? I mean, there's the way you dress. There's the way that you talk about your personal passions. There's the way that you can actually talk about leadership, right? And the way that you might balance yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, and how you take care of yourself, right? So all these things just are so factored into it. It's just a big mix. It's really hard to kind of untangle any certain element, right?
What's Cummins' overall approach to the employee experience? Is it something that is mostly driven by HR? Is it something that is driven by a different organizations, entity within Cummins? Is there a structure basically around the employee experience here? So
I don't think we actually label it like that, but for the past 30 plus years, we've talked about the right environment. Uh-huh. And so that right environment really is that inclusive environment, right? So inclusive, we mean that if we're going to respect somebody's diversity, uh-huh. and we consider diversity different background, different opinion, different way of thinking, different Myers-Briggs preferences, and understanding those and really celebrating those and bringing those to bear in our solutions that we come to. And so that right environment It has to do with all the compliance things and the code of business conduct and these other aspects. But the way that we get things done is very consensus driven. And so if you are a person that's very enterprise driven, or you network really well and you work toward a solution with other people, then that the right environment is really going to kind of set you up for success here, right? So I can't say that we have sat down and strategized about what we want our employees to experience outside of that. We want them to have the opportunity to learn, opportunity to grow, and an opportunity to take leadership opportunities through, or just different leadership practices or opportunities through like an affinity group or a special project or community-based groups that we have. And so that learning, that growing, that chance to not just get promoted, but actually to grow your career and do it amongst people that you care about you and care about your diverse perspective, but also care about you as a person, right? And so we can't say that we think everybody in this company should care about everybody, but that's the environment we're trying to set, right? So, and the employees experience that as a matter of working every day. I can talk about flexible work hours and flexible working conditions and the different communication channels and just different things that we have going on here that kind of add to that experience. And consider it really like icing on the cake. But those are not the actual experience. Those just add to it, right? So we think ultimately employees are going to be happy when they're challenged and when they're motivated, and that's just that's a human element, right? That's not something we're doing unique at Cummins. It's just that's the human the condition, right?
So Cummins obviously has a big emphasis on technology innovation, and what is fascinating for me about Cummins is how they apply in design thinking even beyond the work itself. So going back to our earlier discussion about Cummins' impact in the community in Columbus, Indiana, so Cummins has worked with local schools to develop a STEM program for kids. Right? What was the idea behind it? I would assume that because you have a lot of engineers, STEM resonates very well with families that are focused, that have one or two parents as engineers. But what was the thinking behind it?
So I think the thinking behind it is that with the trends in STEM graduates and STEM people pursuing STEM educations is on the decline. And that's not just here in the U.S., it's multiple countries around the world. And it's impacting us now, but it's also going to impact us much heavier in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
And so what we did was we said, and this was 7 or 8 years ago, that we looked at the foundation, the Cummins Foundation that we have, that was 50 years at the time, and said, where can we really refocus what we're doing? And at the time we said social justice was of major importance, education, and the environment. And so from those three things, we look at education and say, where in education could we focus? So immediately we say, well, in every community where we have a facility, we're going to look for the schools that have disadvantaged students in them and try to do anything we can to get people to go read, mentor, do math, do just whatever we can do as employees to go do to help. So then we said, well, if we have a lot of engineers here, how can we bring their special talents and their education to bear? And by the way, that's kind of self-serving our needs as well.
Right.
If we are to actually push people to understand more about STEM education, and actually from a from elementary school up into middle school and early high school is where we don't really focus, but that's where we go, right? And so we have some programs like we partner with Iridescent to go to elementary schools and our engineers go and help them on repeated basis. And then we go to middle schools with things like our Lego engine with a team of engineers.
You have a Lego engine?
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
30,000 pieces of Lego, and we build about 6,000 of them into these different parts, and then we assemble all those parts together into an engine. And while that engine doesn't show how the engine actually works, it actually puts an engineer side by side with a student who's thinking about maybe engineering or some STEM type of a career or education first, and just gives them about 2.5 hours to do an activity and then allow the conversation to happen. And we coach our employees, hey, just ask the student, what about this? And if they don't want to talk, they don't know, just talk about yourself. And what we've seen is the first 30 minutes, it's dead quiet. And then the second 30 minutes, the chatter starts in, and then the last hour and a half, it's so loud, the people are just talking. And we've actually had parents come in and say, where's my son? Where's my daughter? It's, well, who's your daughter? And they say, oh, there she is. Come on. And they go, okay, Mom, hold on. I want to finish this conversation. Whereas the teachers say, gosh, most of those kids would have been out in the parking lot already waiting on their parents, right? So it's a good passive influencer type model. But that's one of the things that we do in middle schools. And then in high schools, we try to take actual product and different things, and even just go and do presentations more about the career aspects of engineering, right? So say you could do something with 3D modeling, or you could do something with testing, and you could do this, and if you're good with technology, you can do these types of things, and coding, and just to paint the bigger, broader picture of, hey, if you're not really thinking about STEM because you think it's all math and this and it's hard, it is hard, but think about all these things that you can do. And so we kind of by the age of the student, we kind of push out that information to them in the I guess relegated in the right way, hopefully.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
So was it about a year ago that Cummins opened its wellness facility?
Yeah, in Columbus.
Columbus. What was the idea behind it? What was the reasoning for it?
Wellness and health. No, so we've always had occupation health centers, and where you can go and you can get your vital numbers, and you can have your blood drawn or whatever to check your cholesterol and different things. And then if you're injured on the job, or if you just have a cold, you can go there. But Dr. Dexter Sherney came to the company a few years ago, and he said, we can do better. And so the wellness center is actually not a occupational health where you go. They have a lot of different things that you pay for. It's not free, but it's all within this health and wellness ecosystem, I guess. And what we're actually moving to now is these seven levers of health. And there's things like, obviously tobacco cessation, more of a plant-based diet, physical activity. And so some of the things that we have, like you'll see everybody wearing one of these Fitbits or, step counters. And what we're doing is we're all trying to get 10,000 steps a day. That's what the Heart Association, I think, recommends. And so we're all trying to get there because we get extra goodies if we get there. But we also know, based on a lot of the communications, it's just good for you, right? And so people who, maybe work like I do, sometimes I'm up late in the evening talking to people in China, Singapore, Australia, and then sometimes I'm up early in the morning talking to people in the UK or Europe or Africa. So I'm flexing my time, right? I'm going around, and I realize, gosh, if I don't get up and move, I will probably be in a chair for about 11 hours today, and that's not good for me, right? So the company is really trying to remind us all the time, this is something you can do. So the Wellness Center is there for employees in Columbus, but all these other programs are there for all company employees around the world.
Do you see that it's a trend that is growing more and more with companies? I guess it's easier for a large company like Cummins to have its own wellness center versus for a smaller one. But do you see that wellness programs are a trend that is growing?
Yeah, I think in this, I won't say just large companies, right? I think medium-sized companies now are moving into that, and there's third parties that make it easier for companies to deliver that benefit for their employees. But yeah, I definitely see it as a trend. Obviously, healthier employees make better employees, right? And so
more productive. Do you guys track if it has an impact on the productivity of the employees since you started that more structured wellness program?
Yeah, that I don't know. That's an interesting question, but I don't know the answer. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was curious. We had last year at the EX Indianapolis event, we had someone talking about wellness programs and how it impacts the productivity of employees and even retention, right? So I was curious to see if Cummins had anything in that regards in place, but that's fine. Another question I had for you was, so I've heard, typically at this point of the conversation, I like to ask personal questions so that our listeners get to know our guest a bit more intimately. I heard that you are getting into 3D printing.
Me? I wish I did have a 3D printer at home. That would be very cool. No, but Cummins has been into 3D printing for a while now. And recently we bought a really nice 3D printer, and we've been doing some pretty cool prototyping work with that. But what you're referring to is there's a display that we're developing that is built with 3D printed materials, and it's you take a 3D model of our engine and an alternator, and we print those out. Some of the pieces are printed out clear plastic, some of them translucent plastic, some of them black, some of them white, and we build the kind of a cutaway, right, so you can see inside the engine, and then we put an electric motor on there and make it turn. And so the intent is just like we take out that Lego engine or these different STEM activities out to the schools, we really want our employees to have something that represents our technology a lot better, and something where they can show the basics of engine technology and take the parts off and hand them around and have kids come and put them back on the engine and really get a better idea of that, right? But then beyond that, we've got some interactivity built into it that actually allows a student to use an iPad to diagnose an engine problem and go down a decision tree and fix that. Basically, they're not really fixing it, but they have to. They have to actually kind of look through the charts and see which cylinder may be misfiring or something problem, and they, by using deductive reasoning, they get to a solution. And if they don't get there, they are told to go back and start over. The other aspect of it is they can learn a little bit about electricity and how an alternator works, and how it's turned by an engine, and then that once they push the right buttons on the iPad, then the alternator lights up and it sends power to their community, because we have a backdrop that shows hospital, construction site, businesses, farm equipment, homes, all these different places that are powered by alternators and by diesel engines sometimes. And then so it lights up the background, and it's kind of the ooh, ah. And for me, it's just been kind of this point that I came to in my mind, that I just said, kids love this Lego engine, but the really smart kids say, okay, open it up. I want to see how it works inside. And it's just a Lego block, right? And so we built a smaller Lego engine kit that actually turns and has pistons that go up and down. And that was good, but they wanted to see more, and they wanted to really know more about it. So thinking about the 3D printing technology and the engineers that we have here at Cummins, and the fact that I just had to go out and ask, and people said, sure, I'll be on your team, and what do we got to do? And just gathering people from different functions and engineering specifically, and asking them for help. They've helped me, and I couldn't have done it without a team here. Believe me, I don't know my way around any type of engineering. But being able to work with the team, come to that and then know that it's really this iterative process, right? That we're going to build a prototype, we're going to go out and put it in front of kids, and we're going to break it, right? And the kids are going to say, well, I like this, but I hate this about it. And we're going to come back and we're going to say, how do we fix that? How do we make it better, right? So in a sense, we're kind of using human-centered design principles and practices to keep iterating on this display. And so we hope that we would actually have a couple of hundred of these around the world.
Wow.
And so our employees can just grab it and take it to the school, open it up, show it, and go through this 1.5 to 2 hour program. So it's kind of cool.
It's awesome. It's an awesome initiative. So we're getting close to the end here, but what's the best way for our listeners to follow you and Cummins on social media?
Yes. So Cummins Careers, without a space in between the Cummins and Careers, is one of the best ways to follow us. We've got a lot of information about our employees. We've always got a Throwback Thursday event in there. We've got Tech Tuesdays, so we always go out and try to find somebody who's working on some new technology and highlight what they're doing. And then we've just got employee interviews to talk about their career development or community aspect of what they're doing also.
And Twitter and LinkedIn?
Oh, yeah, all across all four. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, obviously.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks so much, Rich, for your time today. I appreciate it. It was an awesome conversation.
Thanks, Stephen. Really appreciate the conversation.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the EX Podcast. If you want to learn more, you can visit our website at exsummits.com to find out when our next events are. You can also find my manifesto on business to employee or B2E branding at b2ebranding.co.